Claire Donovan, a respected high school teacher, and Mark, a devoted father, seemed like the perfect family in the quiet town of Willow Creek. But beneath the surface, a deadly obsession was brewing. When Mark's teenage daughter Sophie crossed paths with Claire's strict sense of justice, it would ignite a chain of events that no one could have predicted, ending in a shocking murder that would leave the entire town questioning who they could trust. The small town of Willow Creek was the kind of place where everyone knew each other, and news traveled fast. Streets were lined with neat houses, children played safely in yards, and the local high school was the heart of the community. Among its residents, Claire Donovan stood out as a figure admired by many. She was a high school teacher in her late 20s, known for her dedication to students and her calm, professional demeanor. Parents trusted her implicitly, colleagues respected her insight, and students often sought her advice beyond academics. She seemed to embody kindness and stability, a person who could guide young minds while maintaining grace under pressure. Outside of school, Claire's life appeared equally perfect. She had been dating Mark, a widower raising his teenage daughter Sophie. Mark was a kind, hard-working man, and together with Claire, they seemed like a well-adjusted, modern family. In social gatherings, Claire's presence was magnetic. She could engage effortlessly in conversation, offer encouragement, and even volunteer at local events without seeming to tire. The community admired how seamlessly she fit into Mark and Sophie's life, as if she had always belonged. But beneath the surface, tensions were quietly building. Sophie, a spirited teenager, sometimes clashed with Claire's strict sense of right and wrong. What outsiders saw as discipline or guidance often created friction behind closed doors. Claire's personality, so admired publicly, had a sharper edge in private. She was meticulous and controlling in ways that only became evident to those who lived with her daily. While neighbors saw a model teacher and caring partner, the reality at home hinted at underlying conflicts that would soon escalate, setting the stage for a chain of events that would shatter the illusion of a perfect life in Willow Creek. It began with something small, almost insignificant. A casual glance at Sophie's phone left unattended on the kitchen counter. Claire noticed messages that hinted at Sophie hiding things, not just minor fibs about schoolwork, but deeper secrets that suggested deception and manipulation. The texts were vague yet unsettling, hinting that Sophie had been dishonest not only with her father, but also with Claire herself. What might have been dismissed as typical teenage behavior struck Claire like a warning bell. As a teacher, she prided herself on integrity and honesty, values she held above all else. To see them undermined in her own home ignited a storm of emotions she struggled to control. Claire's thoughts began to circle obsessively around the idea of punishment and correction. Every small lie seemed magnified, each act of dishonesty adding fuel to a growing fire inside her. She scrutinized Sophie's every action, interpreting ordinary behavior as signs of further deceit. Meals were quiet and tense. Simple questions about school or friends turned into moments of silent judgment. Sophie, unaware of the depth of Claire's growing resentment, continued her daily routines, oblivious to the scrutiny and suspicion that had begun to shadow her every move. The situation began to affect Claire outside the home as well. She found herself distracted at school, unable to focus entirely on her students. Her mind replayed every message, every suspicious behavior she could recall, convincing her that the problem was far more serious than a typical teenage prank or fib. The obsession became almost consuming, coloring her perception of Sophie and the world around her. What started as concern gradually transformed into something darker, a gnawing belief that drastic measures were necessary to correct what she saw as Sophie's moral failings. In the quiet of her bedroom, Claire's thoughts grew more fixated, and a plan, frighteningly precise in her mind, began to take shape, though Sophie began noticing subtle changes in Claire's behavior that made her uneasy. At first, they were small and easily dismissed. Claire asking about who she had been texting, questioning where she had gone after school, or lingering a little too long at the doorway when Sophie was in her room. But over time, the attention became more intense, more intrusive, and Sophie could feel the invisible weight of Claire's scrutiny pressing down on her. Every action felt monitored, every casual remark carefully weighed, as if Claire were searching for signs of guilt in her every move. Sophie tried to brush off the growing tension, assuming it was just a phase or overprotectiveness, but the uneasy feeling in her stomach refused to fade. Mark, Sophie's father, remained largely unaware of the mounting conflict. He trusted Claire, believing she had Sophie's best interests at heart, and so he dismissed Sophie's subtle complaints or worried glances as typical teenage drama. Even when Sophie's moods grew more withdrawn, Mark attributed it to the normal ups and downs of adolescence. He saw no reason to suspect that Claire's concern could be edging into something far more dangerous. At home, the tension simmered quietly, like a storm gathering on the horizon. Meals were tense, casual conversations felt like interrogations, and Sophie found herself avoiding eye contact, careful to say only what was necessary. Claire's behavior had shifted in ways that Sophie could not fully articulate, but she sensed the undercurrent of control and obsession that had taken root. Simple household routines became exercises in caution. Every word, every gesture seemed to matter more than it should. The home that once felt safe now carried a subtle, creeping unease. Sophie's teenage rebellion, so normal and ordinary, had somehow become a catalyst for Claire's growing fixation, setting the stage for events that would soon spiral out of control and change their lives forever. As the days passed, Claire's obsession with Sophie's supposed dishonesty grew into something more deliberate and consuming. She spent hours thinking about the situation, imagining all the ways Sophie had deceived her and Mark, and convincing herself that ordinary consequences would not suffice. Every lie, every hidden message, and every defiance Sophie had shown in the past seemed to take on an exaggerated significance in Claire's mind. She started planning carefully, studying Sophie's routines, noting when she would be alone, and considering how to confront her in a way that would leave no witnesses. In her mind, the plan was precise, logical, and justified, a way to correct what she saw as a moral failure. Claire's outward demeanor remained calm and composed, almost eerily so. To friends and neighbors, she was the same respected teacher and devoted partner, but behind closed doors, her thoughts were dark and relentless. She created an elaborate facade of casual concern, asking seemingly innocent questions, offering help with homework, and pretending to bond with Sophie in ways that masked her true intentions. Every interaction was calculated, every smile measured, as she prepared to execute a plan she believed necessary to restore control and punish what she considered wrongdoing. Even in public, Claire's mind was preoccupied with the growing tension at home. At school, she found herself distracted, her attention divided between her teaching duties and the obsessive thoughts about Sophie's behavior. The sense of urgency intensified, feeding a belief that action had to be taken soon. Every moment Sophie was unsupervised became an opportunity in Claire's mind, a chance to carry out her carefully devised plan without interruption. The ordinary rhythm of life in Willow Creek continued, oblivious to the storm brewing within one household, where trust, fear, and obsession had become dangerously intertwined, setting the stage for a tragedy that no one in the community saw. The evening had begun like any other, with the steady rhythm of rain tapping against the windows and the dull glow of streetlights casting shadows across the quiet neighborhood. Claire saw the moment she had been waiting for. Sophie was alone, distracted by her phone, unaware of the intense focus Claire had placed on her every movement. The teacher's carefully constructed plan, rehearsed countless times in her mind, was finally ready to unfold. Claire approached Sophie under the guise of a private conversation, masking the tension in her voice with a calm, measured tone. Every step was deliberate, every word chosen to draw Sophie away from the safety of her home and into a more secluded area. Once they reached the woods behind the neighborhood, the isolation of the rain-soaked path heightened the sense of inevitability. Sophie's curiosity and trust, which had seemed ordinary just moments before, now left her vulnerable. The argument that began was brief, but charged with the intensity of Claire's bottled-up frustration and obsessive sense of betrayal. Each accusation, though simple in wording, carried the weight of months of fixation and resentment. What began as confrontation quickly escalated, as Claire's obsession overcame reason and morality. The teenager had no time to react, no chance to escape. The violence was swift and shocking, leaving no witnesses and no immediate trace for anyone to follow. In the aftermath, Claire methodically ensured that the scene bore no evidence of her presence. Her mind, still trapped in the belief that this act was justified, focused on eliminating any signs that could connect her to the crime. She left the woods with a chilling sense of control, as though she had solved a problem rather than committed a crime. By the time Sophie failed to return home, the stage was set for panic and fear to ripple through the family and the community. Claire re-entered the household as if nothing had happened, her calm exterior concealing a dark. The morning after Sophie failed to return home, a wave of fear swept over Mark. At first, he assumed she had stayed at a friend's house or lost track of time, but as hours passed with no word from his daughter, panic began to take hold. Calls to friends, neighbors, and classmates yielded no clues. The local police were notified, and soon the quiet streets of Willow Creek were filled with the urgency of a missing child investigation. Flyers with Sophie's smiling face appeared on lampposts, and social media buzzed with alerts and pleas for information. The small town, usually calm and predictable, was thrown into a state of anxious vigilance. Neighbors organized search parties, combing nearby woods, alleyways, and abandoned buildings. Each discovery, from a misplaced backpack to a lone shoe, raised attention but offered no answers. The community felt a growing sense of dread, each hour without news amplifying the fear that something terrible had happened. Claire, meanwhile, maintained an unervingly calm demeanor. She joined in the search, offering to coordinate volunteers and provide support, carefully masking the guilt and dread simmering beneath her composed exterior. Every anxious glance from neighbors and police officers was met with a reassuring smile, as if she were a worried guardian rather than the person responsible for Sophie's disappearance. Mark, consumed by worry, found himself torn between hope and despair. The tension at home was unbearable, with every knock at the door or ring of the phone sending a jolt through his chest. In the midst of the search, whispers of suspicion began to surface. Questions about timing, who had last seen Sophie, and whether her disappearance could have been prevented. Yet Claire remained above suspicion, her poised behavior and well-rehearsed grief convincing everyone of her innocence. The town's focus on finding Sophie obscured the truth, allowing Claire's hidden motives to remain concealed, while the shadows of fear. As the search for Sophie continued, investigators began to notice small inconsistencies that slowly drew attention toward Claire. Her statements to the police, while calm and precise, sometimes contradicted details provided by neighbors and friends. Minor discrepancies, such as the timeline of when she had last seen Sophie or where she claimed to have been during crucial hours, raised subtle but persistent questions. Though nothing was immediately damning, these cracks in her story planted seeds of suspicion in the minds of the detectives, who knew that in missing person cases, the truth often emerged from the smallest details. Meanwhile, Claire's behavior remained carefully composed. She attended press conferences, comforted Mark, and even participated in community-organized search efforts. To outsiders, she was the model partner, concerned and involved, yet behind the surface, she was meticulous in concealing any trace that could link her to Sophie's disappearance. Her diary, hidden in a locked drawer, chronicled her growing obsession and revealed thoughts that were far more sinister than anyone could imagine. The entries detailed her fixation on Sophie's lies, her feelings of betrayal, and the belief that Sophie's actions warranted extreme measures. Forensic teams began scouring areas that Claire had suggested for searches, ironically bringing them closer to evidence she had tried to hide. Small clues, misplaced items, faint traces of activity, and overlooked details began to accumulate, creating a web of circumstantial evidence. Each discovery added pressure, slowly eroding the facade that Claire had so carefully constructed. The community's trust in her, once absolute, began to waver as whispers of doubt circulated and detectives intensified their scrutiny. Every careful observation, every analyzed statement, brought them incrementally closer to uncovering a chilling truth, that the respected teacher they had admired might be hiding a dark secret capable of Shah. The investigation took a dramatic turn when forensic teams discovered traces of evidence that directly connected Claire to the area where Sophie had last been seen. Small, almost imperceptible details, a strand of hair, faint shoe prints, and subtle signs of disturbance in the underbrush painted a growing picture that could no longer be ignored. The authorities, who had initially treated Claire as a concerned stepmother, began to focus their attention more sharply on her. The community, once unified in the search for Sophie, started sensing the tension shift, though few could yet imagine the chilling truth. As detectives dug deeper, they uncovered Claire's hidden diary, a meticulous account of her obsession with Sophie's alleged dishonesty. Each entry revealed a mind consumed by control, resentment, and justification for drastic action. The diary detailed not only her fixation on punishing Sophie, but also her step-by-step mental preparation for the crime she had committed. What had once been considered small signs of overprotectiveness now appeared as calculated steps toward a horrifying outcome. Neighbors and friends who had trusted Claire found themselves grappling with disbelief. How could someone so respected and admired harbor such darkness? The realization rippled through Willow Creek, shaking the town to its core. Friends questioned their own perceptions, colleagues reevaluated their interactions, and Mark, confronted with the mounting evidence, struggled to reconcile the woman he loved with the person implicated in his daughter's disappearance. The legal process moved quickly once the evidence was irrefutable. Claire was arrested, and the careful, composed exterior she had maintained crumbled under the weight of scrutiny. The media descended on the town, broadcasting the shocking revelations to a wider audience, ensuring that the story of betrayal, obsession, and murder would reach far beyond Willow Creek. In the aftermath, the town was forced to confront. The courtroom was tense, filled with a mix of grief, anger, and disbelief. Claire Donovan, once admired as a dedicated teacher and model partner, now faced the full weight of justice for her actions. Evidence meticulously gathered by investigators left little room for doubt. The diary, forensic traces, and inconsistencies in her statements painted a clear picture of premeditation and obsession. Every detail presented in court revealed the extent to which Claire had allowed her fixation on Sophie's behavior to consume her, ultimately leading to a tragedy that shocked the entire community. Mark, devastated by the loss of his daughter, struggled to navigate the complex emotions of grief and betrayal. He had trusted Claire implicitly, believing she had Sophie's best interests at heart. Now, he was forced to reconcile the image of the woman he loved with the horrifying reality of her actions. The community of Willow Creek, once united in mourning and hope for Sophie's safe return, grappled with a sense of collective shock. People questioned how someone they had welcomed into their homes and schools could commit such a calculated and violent act. The trial revealed layers of Claire's personality that had gone unnoticed for years, a combination of charm, intelligence, and a deeply troubling obsession with control. As the jury deliberated, it became clear that her actions could not be excused by circumstance or emotional instability alone. When the verdict was finally announced, Claire was convicted of murder, ensuring that justice would be served, though it could never undo the loss. In the aftermath, Willow Creek struggled to heal. Mark faced the unimaginable task of rebuilding his life without Sophie, and the community wrestled with lingering questions about trust, deception, and the hidden darkness that can exist behind ordinary faces. Claire's story became a chilling cautionary tale, a stark reminder that evil often wears a familiar, even respectable, mask, leaving be.